So does the artwork help us to think about the journey? Is it a painting on the wall that we look at and are inspired by, or is it an opportunity to go out beyond where we are? Now, the artist who created this name is Steve, I think it's Perrault, and he works in clinical psychology and art education. And he went to a school of design in New York, and he's a full-time contemporary artist with work history as a psychotherapist, jail and prison chaplain, and art instructor at primary and secondary college levels. That's a bit of a range, isn't it? This is what he says of his art. I create passages of inside-outside space, lightness and darkness, containment and expansion, screening and distinction. These characteristics and dualities are mediums for personal meditation. I believe art making demands an inner life. Observing art is an invitation to an inner life. Genuine art leads one to face oneself. See, when we choose a character in a book like the one that we're just looking at with Hugo, often there's something at a deeper level as to why we choose the character that we choose. Whether that be something playful or whether that be something that's deeper than that. Speaking about what we aspire to do and be. Now, David, I'm going to cough. Can you just turn me down for a sec? Our inner life is something that in our world today takes time, takes space to actually reflect on what's happening in our inner life. Now, a lot of us have got time to do that. Question is whether we do it, whether we allow ourselves to be distracted or constrained in some way, or whether we avoid the inner work because it may be we're fearful of it for some reason or another. That's what Jesus is talking about with the disciples, about being afraid. And it's the passage that follows on from the Luke reading where Luke is talking about the birds don't worry about the future. Don't keep seeking what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. Instead, seek his kingdom and these things will be given to you as well. Sometimes our fears. He also talks about in that passage about the thief. And sometimes we allow other people to rob us of our inner life because of things that have happened, because of hurts, or we found that when we've opened ourselves up to others, we have been vulnerable and maybe been hurt. So we tend to keep ourselves closed off. But he also talks about being ready for when the master comes home, which is really talking about vocation and what we feel what's important in our life. What are we trying to achieve? At whatever stage we're in, what are we looking to do next? What is it that sustains our life? What is it that our vision is? Now, in looking at this, the description of the artwork in the season's material, there was a quote from Tom Steller in his book In Sync with the Sacred, Out of Step with the World. And I want to read it to you. He asks, what does it mean to live in sync with the sacred? It means to be stepping to the cadence of the sound, the sacred, in cadence with the sacred, in tune, in sync with the sacred, which requires a specific type of courage. The courage to be different, to stand out, to be odd, and perhaps even be considered a threat by those who find their identity, comfort and security in the status quo, the conventional. The good news is that we can do this while conducting our everyday lives. Authenticity is first and foremost a matter of being attuned and responsive to the sacred within, to an instinct, an intuition, a sixth sense, a deep voiceless voice that can be heard even in the crowd. This inner guide may at times call us to live apart from others, but it surely summons us to follow a road less travelled. That is, to turn away from the conventional wisdom of society, those ways of thinking, believing and behaving that go unquestioned. Busy is good, more is better, success equals wealth. But the sacred invites us to embrace all that comes our way, and at times to seek that which stretches us beyond our limits. So that's what faith is, isn't it? Being stretched beyond our limits, being willing to make the journey, which is what Abram did. And the other people that are talked about in Hebrews, but also the disciples in following Jesus. Are we willing to be stretched beyond our limits, to step out in faith, to exercise faith and trust in God, and be open to receiving what God is saying to us?